Apple here.
Hi there. It's important that we question the existence of Abraham Lincoln, because if he didn't exist, then this changes our perspective on history, slavery, and whether or not the United States should divide between the North and the South once again.
Shit! Not this idiot again. And now what's he talking about? He says, prove Abraham Lincoln is real. Well, that's very easy. We have actual historical evidence of Lincoln's existence. Here's the Emancipation Proclamation that we can historically prove he wrote. Here's the Gettysburg Address that we can historically prove he wrote. Need other proof? The Bible is different. It was rewritten hundreds of times over thousands of years. Plus, it talks about magic. Magic, for fuck's sake. Okay, here's the deal. God, magic. Honest Abe, not magic. It's a hell of a lot easier to prove that something is fucking testable by science is real, as opposed to something that is not testable by science. There. I basically proved that Abraham Lincoln exists, at least the standard required to believe that the motherfucker exists. Once you give evidence sufficient enough to believe that God exists, then we'll believe in God. Even though I could technically be done with this video, let's just suffer through the rest of this moronic thing just to make it fair.
As Richard Dawkins once wisely tweeted, the question is not how many millions believe it, it's, is it true? I've been inspired by several articles I've read online and by new atheists to question everything I've been told. I shouldn't believe someone existed just because someone else tells me it's true.
If there's fucking evidence for something that's true, such as the evidence that Lincoln exists, then yes, you should probably believe it. Do you deny that there's evidence for Lincoln's existence? If you do, you're a moron, and the evidence for Lincoln's existence is actually credible. It's not a bunch of shit like, look around you, or without Lincoln, blah 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 blah. No, it's not like that with Lincoln. I mean, yes, without Lincoln, there may still be issues regarding slavery today, but I guess you could technically argue that doesn't prove Lincoln. But we can prove him with historical documents, not full of shit like the Bible, and other forms of historical evidence. And if you're looking for the best possible evidence, go to the guy's grave and just dig his ass up.
And so I think we should apply this logic to Abraham Lincoln. First, let's examine this article from Time magazine, which says it's difficult to reconstruct the life of Lincoln because he was, quote, the most reticent and most secretive man that ever existed.
And what the fuck is that supposed to prove? There are thousands of secretive men that exist in our world today. Does that mean that none of them actually exist? For Christ's sake, Coca-Cola's secret recipe is a heavily guarded secret. But that shit obviously exists.
Maybe that's because he never really existed at all. Let's take a look at what one of the earliest biographers had to say about Lincoln. He was one of the saddest men alive, and he was one of the jolliest men alive. Well, obviously, this is a contradiction. How can someone be the saddest man alive and the happiest man alive?
So, you're gonna put all of your trust in one newspaper article? Is that what you're saying? Also, use your fucking brain. Look at this, for example. By our logic, something that contradicts itself cannot exist. You say that Abraham Lincoln contradicts himself, so therefore he can't exist. But God contradicts himself. Omniscience and omnipotence are both contradictions in themselves. Therefore, God doesn't exist. You're basically accidentally disproving God in this video. What an idiot.
How can you possibly believe someone existed based on texts that are riddled with contradictions? The same author then writes that Lincoln was the sum of his contradictions. So let's do the math. Lincoln was the happiest man alive, but he was also the saddest man alive. So if he's the sum of his contradictions, 1 plus -1 equals... Lincoln didn't exist, people.
And guess what, idiot? The same shit applies to your God. Once again, there are tons of contradictions. Plus ones that cancel out minus ones. With God. Therefore, by your logic, God doesn't exist. You're a fucking idiot. You're actually disproving God's existence in a video that's supposed to be showing atheists just the opposite of that.
Lincoln is a myth. But wait, there's more. The only physical, tangible proof we have that Lincoln existed is text written by men from the industrial age.
That is just so fucking not true. You're so stunningly arrogant to this subject that you're refusing to look at the actual evidence we have for Lincoln's goddamn existence.
Now you tell me, why should I believe something written by men from the industrial age? For example, there are 5 copies of the Gettysburg Address that Lincoln allegedly gave. But if you look closely at the text, there are discrepancies in all of them. There are copies from Hay, Everett, Bancroft, Bliss, and Nicolay. Well, which copy is the right one?
Well, I could say the exact same thing about your Bible. Which Bible is the right one? Which religion is the right one? Once again, you're accidentally disproving religion and God.
Honestly, though, all of these differences might explain the mythic development of the Lincoln story. First, Lincoln was president of the United States, then he was riding a bear, and now he's a vampire slayer.
Yeah, and God was first a virgin impregnator, then a sadistic killer, then a son sacrificer, then a dick who doesn't answer all the prayers. Oh, and plus, those are movies. Fantasy. If you can't understand that those movies aren't real, then you're an idiot.
And while we're talking about vampires, Abraham Lincoln obviously is incompatible with science. If Abraham Lincoln exists, then vampires exist. But vampires don't exist, therefore Abraham Lincoln does not exist.
And, explain to me how the hell Lincoln's existence is supposed to prove that vampires exist? Lincoln was a human being who can be historically proven. That's fucking logical to believe. Vampires are mythical creatures with no evidence supporting their existence. That's not logical to believe. And, once again, just because a movie came out that depicted Abe as a vampire slayer doesn't mean that vampires exist. By that logic, fucking Harry Potter exists, because the movies depict him as existing. You claim that Abe is incompatible with science as well, but how? If he's incompatible with science, then you are too. You're both human beings.
Even then, there are plenty of parallels to the Lincoln story. Lincoln was a leader of the free world, but there was also Mithras, leader of Rome, Horus, leader of Egypt, Dionysus, leader of Thrace. They all lived in a White House. They were all visited by wise men. They ended slavery. They were all leaders, and you know what? They all didn't exist.
Once again, we can prove using historical evidence that Lincoln existed. Don't make me say it again.
Anyways, if you want my take on it, Abraham Lincoln was probably just a copycat. Let's take a look at Jefferson Davis, the first president of the Confederacy. Now let's take a look at Abraham Lincoln, president of the United States. The similarities are undeniable.
And what I do here on my YouTube channel is refute atheism. That's also what other internet atheists do as well, such as Jacqueline Glenn, the Thinking Atheist, the Armored Skeptic, and Cult of Dusty, lots of others. The similarities are undeniable. Therefore, I must not exist. This YouTube channel doesn't exist.
Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that Abraham Lincoln didn't exist. I'm just saying that I don't believe in him. Now, remember, no one is born believing in Lincoln. They have to be taught, usually at a young age, that Lincoln existed and did all of these great things.
Yeah, and once again, you're free to reject that claim. But if there's solid empirical evidence backing it up, it'd be irrational to reject that claim.
But did he really do them? What are the chances that someone would be named Abraham Lincoln, have an iconic hat, have a beard, abolish slavery, invade the South, and be president of the United States? The likelihood of one person doing all of those things is really, 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 really small.
And what is the chance that an Asian American would be named Daniel, have black hair, have a YouTube channel called StateOfDaniel, and make videos refuting atheism? What are the chances of that?
Plus, Lincoln is known for abolishing slavery, so if Lincoln existed, why is there still slavery around the world?
Okay, Lincoln was president of the United States, not the world.
Look, I respect that you believe in Abraham Lincoln, I really do, but please stop shoving your beliefs down my throat, get him out of the classrooms, get him out of the government, and can you please take him off of the penny? If you believe in Abraham Lincoln, then the burden of proof is on you to prove he did exist. And that's a challenge.
And once again, dipshit, you just disproved God. The burden of proof is indeed on the person asserting the claim. Therefore, please meet the burden of proof that God exists. See, now you're starting to think logically. Please apply this logic to fucking God. In addition, it looks like I have indeed met the burden of proof that Lincoln exists. I indeed have. And any normal fucking person, or historian, for that matter, could also meet the burden of proof. If you want to prove to yourself that he exists, just look at the evidence. I mean, come on. Maybe go to a museum, something like that. Otherwise, if you refuse to accept the evidence, you're just plain arrogant. But yes, I have indeed met the burden of proof. And so have historians. That does indeed make the belief in Abraham Lincoln credible. Anyways, it looks like we're finally finished here with this stupid-ass video. where a person who claims to believe in God refuses to give evidence for his existence, asked for evidence that something else existed. I mean, I guess he thinks that that particular logic only applies to things other than God. Basically, I feel as if I didn't even need to refute this video in the first place. It seems as if he basically did it for me. But, as always, I'm the Atheist Apple. Keep it fruity, everyone. Hey guys, Atheist Apple here. Be sure to check out some of my other videos refuting apologists. If you're an atheist, be sure to subscribe and like the video. But I guess you should still like the video and subscribe even if you're not an atheist, unless you yourself refute atheism. But as is quite apparent for those who do refute atheism, they're more than likely wrong about the things that they say. Start that again. Yeah, and what is the chance that an Asian American would be named Daniel, have black hair, make YouTube, start that again.